And here we are, live once again. Everything looking fine. Hello everyone. Just making sure everything is alright. Everything is green. And yep, things are going well. Trying to find, here we go. So hey everybody, welcome aboard. This is another shortwave radio show in progress. And here we are. Sorry, just making sure everything's alright. So hey everybody, welcome aboard. This is the shortwave radio show from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And my name is Gilles, and I'm located, of course, in Montreal. And we have this show every week. So basically, we talk about radio, shortwave radio, all sorts of types of radio. And we are happy to be here, entertain you, and talk about the radio world in general. So this show today will be a little shorter than usual because I have to meet people downtown Montreal at 6 p.m. So that means at 5 p.m. We're going to have a little 2-hour show. 5 p.m. I'll have to sign out. But the good news is that we will be back tomorrow at 2000 hours UTC, tomorrow Saturday. So at least, even if it's shorter today, we'll have a nice one tomorrow for sure. And Sheldon is making me laugh because we have a little something here happening in the province of Quebec. Okay, so anyways, also I want to say next week we're not going to be on shortwave radio. Next week we're going to have a special satellite listening show. So we'll be tuning to satellites next week. So VHF, UHF stuff. There's tons of new amateur satellites that are in orbit that are really cool, with a lot of voice communications on a single sideband. So that's what we're going to do next week. We're going to be tuning to satellites next week. So from time to time, I think that's a fun thing, and we'll keep it here. You know, I lose people because when we move to the VHF UHF channel, we always lose people that don't really know where it's happening. So we'll do it here. It doesn't matter. It's a radio channel anyway. So that's pretty much what I have to say for the time being. So hey, we're 1st of December. This is incredible. 1st of December, 25 days till Christmas, which is just amazing. And so basically it's, you know, that time of year where I hate going to the stores because there's too many people, and I like Christmas. You know, I love Christmas. My Christmas tree is now here. It's all done. But I hate going to stores. I hate the fact that there's 100 million people everywhere. But I like Christmas. I love this period of time. So that's going to be cool, and we'll be checking that out. So tomorrow, of course, a shortwave show also. So we'll be talking about all things radio tomorrow. Well, I've got a few requests of people saying that they want me to revisit a little bit the digital modes that are heard on the shortwave bands and where they are. And also, I've had a few people say, well, is there out of the amateur bands, is there some interesting things to listen to on the digital modes? And yes, there are. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be doing a little bit of decoding of some digital modes live with the ICOM and of course the CRT, the little screen there. So we'll be checking that out tomorrow. So hello everybody, welcome to the show. Mr. Volts from Latvia, Dave Todd, nice to have you here. He says he needs to put the discount on the SDR play. So, pretty cool. J.D. Williamson, bonsoir, bienvenue, welcome. Matthew Kelleher, nice to have you on board. Some SSTV from the International Space Station, apparently on the 5th of December. This is cool. Fabrice Simonet said, don't know anything about satellites, so it is interesting. Well, you'll learn more, Fabrice, next week. I think you'll learn a little bit about, you know, there's fun stuff out there, especially amateur satellites. You know, they're always improving, always putting new ones in orbit. Really, really cool. PLF Radio, nice to have you here. Mika Dommage, bonjour, hi. Nice to have you on board. The story with that is that here in the province of Quebec, we have, you know, French is a very sensitive issue in the province of Quebec, and they've decided that they would actually put in Quebec City 2 languages. So instead of having just bonjour, which means welcome, or, you know, they will put hi. And now it's creating a stir because there's going to be an English word next to a French word in the city of Quebec, which is, I don't know. You know, we get like millions of tourists from the United States every year, I think. I don't think we're going to lose our French just because of a little hi. You know, might as well tell, hey, that guy from Montreal is, you know, speaks French and makes shows in English only. Yeah, you know, sometimes. John Timken, nice to have you here. iMapper from Moscow, nice to have you here. Sheldon Harvey, bonjour, hi. What else do we have? Hey Don, we have Ramp Monsters from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Dan805, nice to have you here. From North Carolina, come on. Cat wants to say hi. Here we go, Mr. Cat, saying hello to everybody. So Mr. Cat is here. Bobby Burgess, CQ from WA5107SWL. This is a shortwave listening call sign. Because yes, you can get shortwave listening call signs if you wish. TOT, nice to have you here. About a G5RV HF antenna for $50. Now this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. Andy Tobin, nice to have you here. Klaus Put, nice to have you on board, and hope you are better now, feeling better. Nothing like, you know, sad to illness. Have long illnesses sometimes. So what else do we have? Steve from Australia, nice to have you on board. And I guess you are Saturday morning over there. Bobby Burgess says, did you check 80 meter ham band last night? Mine was hopping last night. I did not do any radio yesterday, really. I did not have time for that. But I plan on doing a little bit, maybe later tonight when I come back from my little downtown meeting with friends. J.D. Williamson, ça va bien? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Evan Tinney, greetings from Northeast Texas. Julian Wolven, nice to have you on board from Liverpool, UK. And Burdette English speaking hidden. You know, it's just here, it's just crazy. William Helms, nice to have you on board from Florida. And it's cool to see everybody here. So I was tuning into China Radio International in English on 5960 right now. On the IRC chat room, we have SG2 East Nebraska, RSP12. Nice to have you on board. It says 60 Fahrenheit, sunny, unusually warm for this time of year. So colder in 4 days. Yeah, here it's up and down. It's like, you know, we have snow one day and it's all melted the next. So it could be minus, you know, 5. We had our coldest night this week at the beginning of the week. We had minus 10 Celsius, which was the coldest night we have yet. It will be, of course, colder than that at some point in late December and January. Brett Wayne, nice to have you here, KC2NXP. So, basically, really nice. China Radio International on 5960 kilohertz is transmitting from Albania transmitter site. It's also on 7285, but 5960 seemed to be a little better. So it's nice to have everyone on board. So today we're gonna tune a bit around the bands a little bit. We'll just talk about radio. I've got a few questions that I want to answer from some users. And I want to talk about one thing that I've been, it comes back regularly about the time of the show. So we're at 2000 hours UTC, and there's a very, very simple reason for why we are at 2000 hours UTC. Is I'm trying to get a, a little, the kind of a time that will reach both Europe and North America. Kind of, it's kind of difficult. The show being very international, you can't really, please everyone with a time that will fit the show. So, when I chose 2000, I thought, well, it's afternoon. It's afternoon in North America, and it's evening, hopefully not too late evening in Europe. So, it's kind of chosen a little bit because of that. But, if really people would like to have, sometimes I was thinking, maybe two different times. I could, on the weeks that I have two shows, I could maybe do one with favor more the US and one that favor more the Europe. But I think 2000 is chosen kind of wisely, and let's try to get the maximum number of people that can join. Of course, on a Friday, what's complicated is the fact that you have everybody working. So of course, it's afternoon, Friday afternoon here. So there's a lot of people working in North America. But I try to get the best that I can with 2000 UT. I think it's kind of a good time. Serge Steps, nice to have you here. Max Edstrong, nice to have you on board. JD Williamson, yes, I had his first frost last night in Holland. What question? Please ask away. We're here for that. And so, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, for those that just joined, we have, of course, a shortwave show tomorrow. It will be at 2000 UT. Today's show is going to be a little shorter because I have a meeting downtown. So, we next week, of course, the show will be tuning into amateur radio satellites. And like I said, there's a ton of new satellites that are on orbit that are really cool to listen to. I did a little listening session, was I think Sunday or Monday night, I don't remember which day, and had, Monday, I think it was Monday, and had tons of fun listening to these satellites. Funny thing is, for those that know the story, I've got a discount from Fastload, and basically, my mobile vertical is better than my discount. So I guess Fastload is right that antenna for some reason doesn't work well. I don't know why. Matthew Kelleher is also a shortwave listening call sign, WA0080SWL. Pretty cool, pretty cool. What else do we have? Yep, Sat Week next week is satellite, and I think it's going to be fun. And I want to tune in. I wanted to post like, I didn't do videos on when I was listening the other day because I was not sure what I would catch. But now that I got an idea of the satellites and the modes, and especially that there's a lot of satellites that actually have single sideband on them. That I think is going to be cool. And I'm going to try to make a few videos this week of these new satellites that are in orbit. They're really, really cool to listen to. Anyone familiar with the Palstar LA30 loop stick antenna? Anybody know a little bit about it? I've heard about it, I've seen it, but I can't really answer any questions on its performance or not. So, of course, we try to, like I was saying, for the time, keep it at the best time possible to reach the maximum amount of people. 357 Shaki, nice to have you here from Austin, Texas. or shaky. Another question that I've got here, and this one comes from somebody that hasn't been logged in a long time. Susan, that is in California, sent me a nice big email, and she said that she was really sick for a while, couldn't really watch, and she's happy to be back. Seems that a few people are really having some sickness lately. Hope that everybody is well. And so she's happy to be back, and she just asked a question that she has purchased a Texan PL 680, and she says that it stopped working. Is there something that I can try out before I send it back? So you say that it has weird characters in the display. So Mr. Paul the Cat wants to be the star of the show right now. So anyways, anyways, so she has random characters in the display, and there's of course no audio, nothing happens when she presses the on-off switch. Okay, one thing you can try, because maybe it's very simple. Maybe it's the fact that maybe you got a little zapped by some static electricity and the CPU is kind of jammed. What I would try, so there are two things you could try. One, there's a reset on the PL 680. Look in the back or in the bottom. I don't remember where it is exactly. I would need to check mine. But there's there's a small hole, and you can just put a little pointed object there, to reset the radio. That might just fix it. It looks like a CPU that's jammed. Technically, really looks like a CPU that's just kind of frozen. The other thing you can try is remove the batteries and leave it without batteries for a couple of days, and then put batteries back in and see if it comes back to life. It might also. If none of those work, then what I suggest, and you're mentioning that you bought it on eBay through a buyer on eBay. So the Texan PL 680, remember, is actually has a 1-year warranty on it. So contact the seller and arrange to get it exchanged, maybe. And in the questions that you ask, you see that you've seen a few people having issues with some of the Texans like that. By I see off and on from time to time people having issues with their Texan receivers. I've seen people even on when I look at the comments below some of my reviews. There are some people that said, "Hey, I bought this one, and it broke down after 6 months," or so. One of the things that I wonder about Texan, because they have great radios, and most people that have the radios from Texan are happy with them. The majority of people, it works great. But I sometimes think that maybe there's a little bit of lack of a good quality control on these sets. I think they would maybe need to have a little bit more quality control to have it, basically I think it would help. But I would not fear technically buying a Texan receiver. I've got a lot of them here, and they're all really good. And I haven't had really much of a problem, except my PL 680, which I think is probably, if you have to choose one that has maybe a little more problems than the average, probably the Texan PL 680. Mine was with the encoder that just jammed, and that fast load actually opened up, cleaned up, and put some sewing machine oil in it. A little drop. It's a little stiff, but it works, and that's the important. As long as it works. And mine is off about 1.5 kilohertz in the display. But you know, most of what I've seen from Texan was pretty good. And thanks for the email, and thanks for the nice comments, and thanks for the donation also, by the way. JD Wilson says, difference in pros and cons in linear versus switching power supplies. I want to buy the original PSU with my radio, which is linear, but for the same price there is a switching PSU new. Honestly, buy the linear power supply, because switching power supplies tend to make noise, even the good ones. Okay, I've got the AD55, I believe is the model number for my ICOM ICR 8500. So to give you an idea, my ICOM comes with a switching power supply. ICOM decided to change that big linear power supply that was probably big and heavy with a switching power supply, which is very small and very light. The problem is it creates buzzes at regular intervals. Actually, if I turn on my ICOM, you would see new lines of buzzes appear on my display of my SDR. So it gives you an idea that the power supply is creating noise. So for any radio equipment, honestly, I would stay away from switching power supplies. I would stay away from those, because the difference, okay, linear power supply uses a big old transformer with, you know, just the regulation circuit. It doesn't really create any interference, which is nice. But they are bigger in general. They are much heavier also, especially if you want a lot more power. The more power you want, the heavier it's going to be and the bigger it's going to be. A switching power supply, the reason they've invented those is very simple. Because you can have a very thin, very small circuit that will do whatever you want. But the problem is it has many types of oscillators inside that create all sorts of buzzings and harmonics at different frequencies. So stay away, because these will create noise. You know, I know there are some really good switching power supplies. I remember watching one, there's a video on YouTube. The guy was looking at very high quality switching power supplies for radio equipment. And yes, there are some switching power supplies that are made to be very quiet and not interfere. They are very expensive. And, you know, technically, I think the best is a linear. You'll have much less noise on the linear power supply than the switching one. Even the one that's made for the radio. I mean, look, my ICOM, the switching power supply I have is made to be with the radio, and it is a little noisy, for sure. Okay, what else do we have? Do you use a Fedry SDR? Yes, this is the Fedry on the HD SDR software. Max Set Strong is asking what kind of software you're using. So this is HD SDR. It is my favorite, honestly, for me, it's my favorite software for running my Fedry. One thing that it lacks that the SDR Sharp has is that the SDR Sharp is one of the popular ones, and it has a lot of add-ons to you know, put all sorts of new functionalities in it, which doesn't really, we don't have it on HD SDR. But for the visuals and the way it works, I like HD SDR better. Casper Peterson, nice to have you here. So yeah, a little reset on the thanks, Bobby. I just saw your donation come through on the notifications here. Welcome, thanks very much. Daxfar74, hello there, nice to have you here. Thank you very much for the nice comments. As Shiki says, switching power supplies used to be very noisy. So exactly, I prefer a linear supply for sure. Also, BLF radio. Yep, that is true. No Texans have a rubberized finish that gets really sticky and disgusting after a certain amount of time. And you're making me think about this. I forgot to buy a kind of pledge to try it on the my Grenic G5. I want to try that out. J.D. Williamson says that's +2 for the linear, and yes, I am using it for ham shortwave. Yeah, linear all the way. Don't buy a switching for any ham or shortwave stuff. Kyle M, nice to have you here. David Arden, KJ4CMY, nice to have you on board. Jerry, nice to have you here. John Ritson, hello there. Pretty cool. And David Arden says, I had a headache once. I took an ephedrine and my headache was gone. Man, yes, it does sound like some kind of medication. Did you take your ephedrine before going to bed? Rumpelstiltskin, nice to have you here on board. And Mr. Rolf Vault says linear power supplies will be harder and harder to get and more expensive. Yeah, that's what I fear of the future. Getting more difficult all the time to get you know, linear power supplies, for sure. And they will get more expensive, that's for sure, because I mean the industry has totally moved, totally moved towards switching power supplies, and this is sad because it's like, you know, I understand the move. I mean, today we gotta have smaller equipment. So what's happening is that the fact that we want smaller equipment means, you know, we need some smaller way of giving that power to all of these devices. So of course there are physical rules, you know, the rules of physics prevent you from making a, you know, strong linear power supply that would be small. It's usually the more you have power to give, the bigger the transformer will be in there, and it's going to be really big and heavy. So you know, today's equipment forced everybody to just do little small power supplies, and the only way to do a small power supply is to have a switching one. And so it's very, very you know, much more interesting for them. And yes, there is a lot of loss, absolutely, in linear power supplies. And I would guess that with the electronics, it probably they probably are able to have, you know, much more efficiency on a switching power supply. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost that it creates a lot of noise. But you know, some are better than others. I look at, I mean, you know, laptop computers have switching power supplies, and you can see that they're not all created equal. For example, my Toshiba, the two Toshibas here are running on their power supplies, and they don't create any noise here. If I unplug the power supplies or plug them back, there's no audible or visible noise in here. But I've got an Acer that I picked up from a client. That Acer has a crappy power supply on it. When I plug it in, the general noise level here becomes higher suddenly. So I believe, you know, from that you can see that creating a good switching power supply is possible. Creating one that doesn't create noise within your radio equipment, you know, is possible. It's just that a lot of them are probably a little too cheap or too crappy. They don't put the effort in really kind of, you know, removing the noise off of it. TOT says he's extended his telescopic antenna and went to bed. Yeah, that's what I do sometimes, and you know, it creates different images, different from different people. But you know, I like listening to shortwave going to bed. That's what I mean, of course. I'm sure everybody understood that. John Ritson says that now he's on fiber broadband after waiting many months. So now I'm in HD. So that's yeah. That's always what I think, John. Is it a good or a bad thing or not? I'm not sure either. But Brett Wayne says, I have a switcher on my ALS 600 amp, but it costs 1400. It is very good. Yeah, of course. A switcher, you know, when you pay you know, a high price, I'm sure they're really good. I mean, I'm sure switching power supplies of good quality are probably as quiet as the linear one, but they will cost you more in general. So, you know, and they are more expensive. I mean, a good power supply, a good switching power supply will run much more expensive than the regular general ones, you know. So, yeah, probably involves the different certifications depending. You know, the other one's a cheap one, and you can see a difference. My two Toshiba power supplies that actually create no noise are heavier. They are switching power supplies, but they are heavier. You can see that there's more circuitry inside, where the Acer power supply is extremely light. So it's like they just put the minimum amount of parts to create the current, the voltage and the current they wanted, and that's it. Also, the difference is my Toshiba power supply, you know, at the highest usage of my laptops, you know, like charging the battery plus powering my laptop, will become warm to the touch. The cheap one from Acer will become so hot that you're wondering why the plastic's not melting. So, you know, it's really a bad power supply. I don't even think it's the original one, because it doesn't say Acer on it. It says, I don't remember what it says, but I think that power supply probably was not the original power supply for that laptop, because I mean, I couldn't, you know, I've always ranted a little bit against Acer over the years as a tech guy, although they've actually become much better today. You know, the quality of Acer computers today is much better than the ones 10 years ago. But I don't think that power supply was with that laptop for sure. Fabrice Simonet says, am I the only one who bend brake whip antennas on a regular basis, or more clumsy than the average people? I need to order one 2 times a year minimum. And welcome to the club. I think we're just, you know, I think it's because, you know, there's ways to manipulate your telescopic antenna to you know, close the different sections and not break the antenna. But you know, you're probably like me, the kind that like wants to close it as fast as possible. And very often we have the bad habit of taking the top of the antenna to close it down, where we should actually take, you know, bottom sections and go, you know, 2 or 3 times before we actually close it, rather than just go from the top, which is a bad idea, because what's happening is you're at the, you know, the top of the antenna. That means you're at the point where it's the weakest, because it's very small and it's very easy to bend. And that's always the bad way to close telescopic antenna. So, you know, yeah, internet is so, you know, in the US and Canada, the internet speeds are very, very, you know, different from where you live. You know, I was talking to my nephew the other day, and he was telling me that, you know, he's on Bell, and he was telling me that in the evenings he has difficulty watching Netflix, because it always, it always, you know, freezes from time to time, and it has to buffer. And you know, I was telling him it's not supposed to. I mean, I don't have that with Videotron here, which I like Videotron for that. My speed is constant. It's very, very constant. So, you know, I've got 100 megabits per second here, and it's always, when I tested, whatever time I tested, it always goes to about 105 megabits per second all the time, which is really, really nice. But in his case, he was telling me that, and I know that, you know, over the years I've seen, and that's probably one of the biggest complaints of internet service providers across Canada and the US is the fact that, you know, the advertised speed and the real speed is extremely different. And I remember every time I would go to a client and I would see that their speed was slow, I was always telling the client, what, you know, how much are you paying for this, and what's supposed to be the speed that you're supposed to get. And you know, I remember going to the clients where they would say, oh well, I'm supposed to have 10 megabits per second, and I would tell them, look, you barely get 2 or 3. And I was always telling them, don't accept that. Complain to the company. Tell them that that's not acceptable. You can't, you know, we shouldn't have internet speeds lower than what is advertised. I'm sorry, but if you want to advertise a number, I don't want to have that number, you know, a possibility. I want that number to be what I'm, you know, the speed I'm going to. And this week I read an article about the UK, and I think it's a great idea. They passed a law in the UK to force internet service providers to display not the maximum speed of a connection, but the average speed that the people get. So in the case where, you know, they advertise 50 megabits, well, if the average of everybody on their network is 20 megabits, they won't be able to advertise 50. They'll have to advertise 20. Now, that still could be wrong, because that still could mean somebody will have 10, you know, but it's just crazy. I mean, if you advertise a speed, we should have that speed. There's a lot of these companies are just going crazy, you know, not really giving us, you know, what we should. Yeah, same for extension. Shouldn't put all link by the top. Absolutely. You know, we have to be a little more careful with. We have to be careful with all of that. Victor Osorio, nice to have you here. Hey, Mad Radio DX, or did I say hi? I'm trying to remember if I said hi, but hi. Victor Osorio says, my main PC at home is now is NUC, and I now have a lot less noise than I had on the mini tower PC. So yeah, and you know, not all computers are created equal. I've in desktops also, you know, over the years I've seen a lot of desktops. Some desktops, you know, one part of my, for radio noise, one part of my business when I would fix a lot of computers, there was a percentage of people that lived outside Montreal that would actually bring their PCs here to fix. And I've seen a lot of towers, a lot of desktop computers come here. And I remember so often when I would fix computers or try to, you know, find problems, I would listen, you know, I'd have the shortwave radio on some frequency. And over the years, you see that all computers are not created equal for the power supply. So you have these computers. I remember having some PCs that I would just turn on. Some I would not even turn on. Some just by plugging the power cord, and you'd have a huge amount of noise suddenly in the shortwave bands. Some, when you would turn it on, as long as it was not turned on, you could not. Some were, you know, all sorts of buzzing noises and whatever. Some really, really quiet, just crazy. You know, here with the laptops that I've acquired or got from clients that didn't want them anymore, I have about 10 laptops here, and they all have a separate use. Some I will not turn on or use when I do shortwave. So, you know, that Acer I will not. If I get a Dell one, I keep that one. I keep that one off when I actually do shortwave, because it has little buzzing sounds here and there. My Toshibas will be the one that I use because they have their original power supply and they are very low noise, if noise at all. I don't even think I remember seeing a impact on my shortwave radio of one of my 2 Toshiba laptops I've got here. So they're actually working right now. I've got the Toshiba that actually is streaming the video on the left side here, and here I've got a 17-inch Toshiba that is actually with the chat room and has a few web pages open that I use. So and one's on Windows 10. The streaming computer's on Windows 10. The chat computer is on Linux. I've switched because I wanted to try distros. I'm on Elementary OS right now, which I believe is a variation of Ubuntu, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, so don't take for cash, but Elementary OS is what I'm using, which is a Linux version on this machine right now. But that's probably it, you know, like John Ritson says, if they are well filtered and work well, and they are clean, the cheap ones are bad for noise, you know, because that's probably one of the things. The power supply, if it's a cheap one, they will not have added all the filtering required because it costs money. And that's the biggest problem we have with shortwave, because when you buy, you know, that DVD player, or when you buy that, you know, radio, that device of some sort, that little, you know, box for whatever, your TV, or even the TVs themselves, a lot of the ones in there are really cheap. And, you know, we can't are participating in there, because, you know, one of the things we want is when we buy something, you know, sometimes rather than looking at what we want, we're going to say, well, I want the cheapest one available, and you'll go home with a $50 DVD player that frankly is worth $50, and the switching power supply will be bad because it's the minimum possible, you know, everything is minimum in there, so it creates tons of noise and all of these things, you know. But it's not, you know, it's not because you pay a big amount of money, you know, if you buy maybe a $200 DVD player, you know, that one will of course be better quality and do more things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will be less noisy though. Sometimes they have this habit of using, you know, the really cheap, you know, switching power supplies in there, and you end up with devices that make a lot of noise. You know, two things that I'm extremely surprised. The lighting that I'm using for my live shows are LED lights, okay? So they are 100-watt bulbs. And one of the things that I did was I purchased only one, and I turned it on because I wanted to see, does it affect my shortwave signals? You know, will they create noise? I'm surprised they are Philips brand LED lights, and I have to say I'm extremely surprised they have no impact at all on the noise that I have, which is really nice, because you know, I don't want to have incandescent bulbs that would, like, you know, create tons of heat, and of course, you know, cost a lot more in electricity. And so these LED lights are amazing. I've also got a I think it's 100, something like 124 or 148 LEDs in their big bright spots, made for a kind of studio, you know, TV studio style, that I purchased on eBay, which is very quiet also, I gotta say. But I'm surprised. The other thing I'm surprised, I was scared when I bought my TV here. I was scared that when I plugged this in, it would be hell all over my shortwave radio. And one of the things I was actually thinking is, well, if this thing creates a lot of noise, even when it's shut down, I'm sending this back. And, you know, if they want to know why, I'm going to tell them, this thing creates too much interference. I bet never heard that as a comment, why you're returning something. Because, you know, there are some that actually create really very, very small amount of noise. Well, I'm surprised this thing creates zero noise. The only noise I will have a little bit of, if I bring a portable radio close here, yes, I see there's an impact from the electronic circuitry in here. But I have to be close. Once I move away, I don't hear that noise anymore. And when the TV's turned on, you know, sometimes in the interference, you turn on the TV, you immediately see that there's a difference in the noise level. In this case, on or off, I see no difference at all. I even unplugged it because I was thinking maybe it has noise, but I gotta unplug it to know. And I'm extremely surprised that Toshiba TV here creates no noise. No noise. And I'm really happy with that because I can use it for my SDR, which is really cool, and a 50-inch TV in your living room. So anyways, noise is a huge issue with a lot of the cheap devices we buy today. And that's probably the #1 enemy of our shortwave radios. I wouldn't be surprised that a good chunk of people that decided they don't want to listen to shortwave anymore did it because they have so much noise that they just couldn't hear anything else than Brother Stare, and they said, well, the hell with it. I don't get anything. That's not counting that, you know, people that purchased shortwave radios got home and there's so much noise around you that they just look at it and say, well, this thing doesn't work. It says I'm going to hear the world. I can't even hear, you know, a local AM station or something. I'm sure some people have returned, you know. I see comments about noise all the time here on the channel. I see people talking about, you know, hey, I bought that radio that you reviewed, and you know, I need help because I'm trying all these stations and I know at what time this or that station, and or sometimes they'll say, I was watching your video of Radio Romania the other day, that you're getting really clear, really strong, just with the radio and the telescopic antenna. And I live, you know, not far from where you are. I'm in one of the northern US states, and I can't hear it. And I get that as a comment pretty regularly. And the only thing that I can think of when that happens is, okay, your noise level is maybe way too high. And it's difficult to explain. So I'll often say, well, when you put the radio, you just turn it on, you know, and there's no stations, just static. That signal indicator that shows the strength of signal, is it full scale? Well, you got an explanation here, because if it is, that means the noise around you is so strong that it's actually just washing out everything, every signal. You know, even here, I have a lot of noise, but I still can listen. You know, honestly, I still can listen even though I have a lot of noise. But one of the things that is, of course, what you notice is I take the same radio and I go to Perry Island where there's nothing, and there I see what it is when there's no noise, or really very low noise. And the first thing you notice is all of these little signals that day after day I try to tune. I hear something in the noise. Over there, it's easy catch. It's as if it's, you know, I mean, at Perry Island, I think every time I went there, Channel Africa was an easy catch on 15235. I could hear that every day, every time I would go there. I come back here, oh, it's there. I can make out that there's some talking. I can't really make out the program. And the problem is the noise level, unfortunately. It's a major plague of our shortwave hobby. Nick Amendot from Romania, nice to have you here. And he says, today is our national day, so free beer for everybody. Woohoo! Come on, we need to have these teleportation things. I want to have free beer. I want to have Romanian beer. I want to taste one of the, what is there, can you tell us of one of the famous Romanian beers that people like? So cheers, everybody. John Young, nice to have you here. All hail Romania, cheers. Bram, nice to have you here. VA2XE from Pointe Claire, in the suburb of Montreal, on the west side of Montreal. No, it's the east side. Pointe Claire. I'm totally lost. Pointe Claire, anyways. Philip Briggs, nice to have you on board from Brazil. David Arden, Luis Arevalo, nice to have you on board. Where do you get knowledge on shortwave? You are best with answers. A quick answer to that question would be 35 years of listening to shortwave. I mean, I'll be in my 36th official intense shortwave listening year next year. 36, count them. I'll be 49 years old in March, so I'm really, really close to that big 50. And it's really, really all the years. And you know, I'm the kind of guy that really, really, really like to read a lot. You know, when I sit down with my shortwave radio, they, you know, I like to read. One of the great things I've always done and I've always wanted to do is every time I would sit down and have some shortwave radio time, what I would do is simply, you know, open a shortwave or even an electronic book. I've got the big ARRL handbook for amateur radio. I mean, I love reading. I love reading about all this stuff, the new stuff coming, and so all of that together, you know, all of that together, I think is you know, some of the knowledge. I'm not, you know, some of you out there have, you know, I like to call myself like a you know, general knowledge, meaning I have knowledge about a lot of little aspects of the shortwave, but some of you out there, some of you amateur radio guys, some of you into electronics more, have more knowledge of specific aspects. I'm sure a lot of you, you know, I'm sure there are some of you out there that could show me a lot about antennas. I'll have, you know, my knowledge where I can maybe show more of a specific aspect of radio. But mine is more of a general, not specialized, you know, knowledge, basically. So, you know. John Timken says, Chinese telescopic antenna on eBay are only $1.30 each. Reasonable quality, too. You know, I'm lucky because here I live next to a store called Addison. It's a electronic surplus store. And there's tons of electronic stuff there. And one of the things I can get there for really cheap is telescopic antennas. They have tons and tons of them, and they sell them for like $1, $1.50. So I'm really lucky because I live really, really close to a great source of telescopic antennas. I was thinking once of buying like a box of telescopic antennas from them and, you know, just selling them on eBay or something for, you know, just a little profit, you know. Yeah, Valts, absolutely, when they're allowed to slow down. You know, you're talking about slowdown of competition. I'm sorry, I'm far away in the chat, guys, but you know what? It's crazy because I was reading the other day that I think it was Comcast. Every time Comcast would go to a neighborhood in the United States, they would intentionally cut down the fiber lines of the competition. It's like, man, this is really unfair competition, I can tell you that. Manrito DXer says dropped is Eton E5. Oops, let me go back here. Just gonna go slowly. So I'm coming. Max Edstrong, to answer your question, yes, stay away from the 8055 power supply from ICOM. It is a buzzing machine. It is such a buzzing machine that for a long time I used my linear power supply that I had built to power the radio because it removed the buzzing that was everywhere. I mean, that 8055 power supply from ICOM, it buzzes every, I don't know, 15, 20 kilohertz. It just drives me mad. You know, it buzzes enough, and you tell them, because I wrote to them, and they say, well, in our test, it doesn't buzz, it doesn't do anything. Did you test out listening to shortwave correctly? I'm sorry. Yes, it doesn't in the VHF, UHF range. When I tune to satellites, I don't have buzzing there. But I'm not sure you tested really well on the below 30 megahertz side of it. Because there, it buzzes a lot. And the lower you go, the stronger they are. So, and I'm not the only one, by the way. I'm not the only one. Because I've read a lot of people, comments of, hey, that power supply sucks. And I've told ICOM, and ICOM says, no, it doesn't. Yeah, right. Hey, Mickey Del Mage, nice to have you here. I hope I told you I said hello earlier. I might have jumped over you. So, really nice. Says that Shaw has a huge problem here last night. Cable pixelized for an hour and a half during the Oilers Leaf hockey game last night. People were pissed. Yeah. You know, there are a lot of things like that. One of the things that, you know, I understand why you do it, but that, you know, it kind of pisses you off is like HD. You know, they sell these HD terminals for the cable, and they tell you, hey, now you have high definition. Until you start seeing dark movies, and you see that when they're color, there's a lot of colors. You see that it's all, you know, the compression. You can see the compression makes it kind of horrible in certain areas, and you're like, man, there's really too much compression. And it tells me, you know, sometimes I feel like saying, how can you advertise this as HD when I call this crappy HD? You know, if you look at the same movie and you use rabbit ears, if it's on a station that's transmitting a signal, an HD signal, a TV HD signal, you'll see that you won't see that degrading anymore. Why? Because there is no compression on the HD signal that's sent by the antenna, but there's compression on the cable signal. Whatever company you are with, they all compress this. They compress it because they want to use the maximum amount of bandwidth for as many things as possible. So the only way that they can do that is, let's compress the signal a little bit, because it's going to allow us to have more stations on the same cable. Problem is, you could see that crappiness of compression when you look at pictures on an HD TV. You know, it's something you didn't see when you were at that big CRT TV, but now you see it when it's HD. And, you know, frankly, when I see that, it kind of infuriates me a little bit, because I'm like, I can see it. You know, I'm one of those that sees it. And of course, I'm the guy that's gonna, I'm the guy that's gonna, you know, probably ruin the party, because I'm gonna say, oh man, too much compression. And they're all gonna say, what do you mean? Oh, look on the upper right of the screen. Look at that, how it is there. It's not supposed to be like that. It's blah, blah, blah. And they're all like, oh God, yeah, I've seen that a few times. Yeah, that's compression. It's the compression they use. It's too much compression, and it degrades the picture quality. Andras Bato, nice to have you on board from Hungary, HA6NN. Nice to have you on board, Andy. Pretty cool. Dave Bedford, nice to have you here. So, you know, we're talking about interference right now. Really, you know. J.D. Williamson says, we actually have companies decline us a service because they could not guarantee the maximum speed or location. So we got cable internet. Huh, interesting. So, Walt says, we got first 5G base station deployed this year, and the bands have been auctioned to the providers. Huh. Here, 5G is still far away. I mean, the investments here are crappy. There should be more investments. I can tell you that. Mad Reader DXer says, if an ISP says 20 megabits per second, then yes, it is possible, but you have to live right next door. Yeah, you know, totally true. You got to live really near where the exchange is done. And the farther away you are, the slower the speed. Absolutely. So, you know. Two hands of the radio. Nice to have you on board. Buzzsaw 161. Nice to have you on board. We're talking about interference. That's what's up. David Arden says, just tested my internet speed, 19.7 megabits per second. Yeah, but just a word of caution on that. If you're watching my stream at the same time, it lowered your speed. You really need to do it clean with nothing happening no video feeds or anything. You know, at least I'm happy with that because I've got 100 down and 20 up, and it's 100 down and 20 up when I test it every time, so it's good. You know, for me the funny thing is when the cable, I called my video call my cable company the other day, and they also give me they gave me cable and internet. And the lady at the other end was wondering why I have 100 down, 20 up, because she said, what do you do with your internet? Because I'm maybe you don't really need that speed. You're paying a lot of money for it, And then she said, well, oh, okay, I see here that you're a big user, because I typically every month I probably use like between 3 and 500 gigabits download. So I'm a heavy user of internet here. And she said, wow, okay. But what is interesting, and I was telling her, I'm very different from the average internet user, because my usage of the internet is lots of uploads. Usually the average internet user is downloads mostly and very little upload. But I YouTube videos and I do live streams. I upload more in a month than I download, which is the reverse. It's really the reverse of any internet user. I need fast upload speeds, which is something hard to get because the internet is always done in that way. Faster downloads, slower uploads. Why? Because the typical 90% of the users have a lot of download stuff. They'll watch videos, they'll download programs, they'll download files, they look at web pages. But the uploads is nothing. The upload is just, check some and little things like emails or whatever you're typing in Facebook. The uploads is doesn't use anything. So they don't need to give you an upload speed that's very fast, because you aren't in general using an upload speed. Sorry, we're turning this show into a tech show right now, but they don't need to give you that upload speed, to have a good internet connection. They know that it's much more important to give you a download speed. But I'm the reverse. And I was telling them, if you add 100 up, 100 down, I'd use that. Because when, it might seem fast, but 20 megabits per second, and you guys got to remember that I'm sending in a 2 or 3 hour show gigabytes of data upstream. And when I upload videos, okay, to give you an idea, in a day that I'm really productive and I upload tons of videos, well, each video that I send to YouTube often measures 1 to 2 gigabytes. It's they're really big. Well, if I'd have a faster upload speed, it would go faster for me to upload to YouTube. I could compress and maybe use different, different file format that's smaller and things like that. But, because at YouTube anyways, it is compressed and the videos are totally optimized, so they're not full HD. There's a lot of compression there. But still, my upload needs to be fast. VK2FBAJ, nice to have you on board from Sydney, Australia. 28 degrees Celsius today. Wow, I like that. I could be outside and listen to the radio. Computer where there's HDSDR's Windows 7. Yes, here it is, a Windows 7 machine. I've put Windows 10 on this machine, and it had a huge issue where the video output on HDMI isn't detected for some reason. And I've fiddled and tried to get HDMI detection for the video card on this desktop. And after about 3 hours of going crazy trying to get that signal to work, I just said the hell with it, I'm going to Windows 7. So I installed Windows 7. But If it would not be for that, I would be in Windows 10 probably. You know, actually, I was thinking I could maybe, you know, get myself a cheap video card, but you know, better than this, because the one in here is the one stock. It's an HP computer, and it's the most crappy minimum graphics card that you can have for a PC. And anything that I would buy cheap is 100 times more than what I got there. So I was thinking maybe I should, you know, get a cheap graphics card and maybe upgrade to Windows 10. And then again, you know, it works fine on Windows 7. So I've got no problem there. What else do we have? What else do we have? Hello everybody. No, they're not real 100 watt. It's equivalency. They are 100 watt equivalency. So they actually use, I think they use something like 23 watts or something like that while they are. But I'm not using, obviously using the correct term, but you know, I should probably be measuring the light in lux, or you know, those light measurements. But here they have this way of, you know, putting on the package what it's supposed to give as light. So what it does is they tell you an LED bulb, it consumes 23 watts in reality, but is equivalent to a 100 watt incandescent bulb. But obviously that's not how we should measure this. We should measure this in lux, the number, how many lux is there in reality of light around me. So, oh really? So I'm switching power supplies. I have shift control to move the birdies. Huh. I like to move the birdies away from anything that's radio. VK2FBA Jace says a question, or more specifically a topic of conversation. At my AIM lessons weekend, the examiner said that there is a theory that RF interference is starting to propagate. What do you mean by is starting to propagate? Because RF interference is getting more and more in our lives, our radio lives, that's for sure. You know, RF interference is a type of radio signal. It's generally a white noise radio signal. So it propagates like any other radio signal. If you've got a source of a very, very high noise, and you know, one thing that you got to remember is that our wall sockets are often they're not filtered. So say you buy a plasma TV. Plasma TVs are the worst for shortwave. Buy a plasma TV, which is almost impossible to get in these days, and plug it to the wall socket. You know what happens there? You got to think about the fact that, okay, it creates noise. That cord that goes to the wall socket acts as an antenna, because it's directly in the power supply, which is one of the places where there's a lot of noise. So you got an antenna here, propagates noise, and you plug it in the wall socket. There's no filtering there. So all the wiring inside your home suddenly becomes a huge antenna to propagate noise. And one of these things that I can actually demonstrate here, there's so much noise in the electrical circuitry here where I live, then when I turn on my kitchen lights, there's suddenly more noise in the kitchen on my radios. And they're not done by the bulbs because they are incandescent. And all I can think of is, okay, when I switch on the light, I actually complete the circuit for the noise that's everywhere, and it's going all the rest of the circuit. That's pretty much what I think, you know, because I thought at first maybe, you know, bad contact, so let's you know, look inside the switch. Maybe the switch has a problem. No, it really seems to be that it's like it's extending the circuitry. It's extending the antenna of the wiring inside the home. It's really crazy. Brad Wayne says some LEDs in his house are bad. Yeah, a lot of LEDs are no good. I see there's a lot of forums where I've read people going crazy over the fact that they bought LED bulbs and that they are immense noise. Stay away from fluorescent and compact fluorescent stuff. It's I saw somebody mention that earlier. That is horrible. That is horrible. So, you know. So exactly, when you live in an apartment building, there's not a lot that can be done about that. Absolutely. Tim Sok, signals from behind the Iron Curtain were interesting. Yeah, that was a hell of a time. You know, the 80s and the listening. It was, you know, it's a bad period of time, obviously, for humanity, for people. But it's radio-wise, it was an amazing period of time. The 70s and the 80s, even the 60s probably when I wasn't there. Shortwave-wise was amazing. There was a lot of things to listen to, and there was a lot of you know, cool things. Radio Moscow was kind of interesting. I was a big listener of Radio Moscow. I actually enjoyed listening to Radio Moscow. It's kind of nice, you know. And you know, Radio Berlin International, and you know, they made a huge effort. There's one thing that you got to give all the ex-Soviet states and you know, the USSR. They made huge efforts in trying to make the programming interesting, and I think they succeeded up to some point. And you know, let's face it, you're Canadian or American, and there was some mystery behind, you know, what's happening in the USSR and the Eastern Bloc countries, and that was interesting in itself because, you know, we would tune in. Of course, we would tune in with our Western ears, meaning would filter out some stuff that we'd hear that's like, you know, the propaganda of the Soviet era. But at the same time, there was some mystery with that. There was some interesting listening. We wanted to. It's you know, I was young. I was in the 80s. You know, I was a teenager to young adult. I was discovering through shortwave radio the world a lot more than the average person. And there's that little, you know, as a teenager, I guess, you know, you're a little more innocent. The mystery of all of what's happening over there, you know, and listening to that on shortwave was kind of cool. What else do we have? Glenn Goodale, what SDR device do you use? Nice show, thank you. It's a AFEDRI, AFEDRI SDR, and it is a long wave, medium wave, short wave radio. Really, really nice. Well, it says, when I was living in a city in a 9-story reinforced concrete apartment building, was no go really. You got nothing. Yeah, that also doesn't help. You know, when you got these reinforced concrete buildings, these block so much. Blanchard 3, nice to have you here. What the hell am I drinking? I'm drinking my famous Fin du Monde. Pretty much what I'm actually drinking right now. So I didn't want to have, you know, I think one of these will start me up for my meeting with some friends later on. I'll be a little, you know. What else do we have? Hey, I'm trying to go a little faster, guys. I'm going a little faster here. So, what else do we have? Fitterbrick says, above 5 MHz, I'm generally noise-free for an urban area, but below 5, hardly anything except very, very local AM stations. So, you know, it's... William Helm says, you just reminded me to check my Panasonic RX DT600 after I've discovered noise from it without knowing why. Power is switched on from tap instead of the primary. I've unplugged it, so we'll see. Yeah, you know, you never know. It was mentioned last week that possibly New York and Shannon Vomits had stopped broadcasting. Anyone heard them last week? I haven't heard, you know, you can try it out right now. But I haven't heard Shannon. I've tried a few times, I haven't heard Shannon. So 5505. Let's check it out here. Nothing on Shannon, frequency of 5505. And one good test is I'm going to try the RAF vomit. So this is the RAF, Royal Air Force. So if I hear Royal Air Force, I should hear Shannon, and it's not there. And as for the New York one, it's also gone. And I think it's part of the fact that they are phasing out vomits. So New York's probably gone for good, and I wouldn't be surprised Shannon's gone for good. You know, as we will get less and less aeronautical communications, the vomits are also going to go away. Well, I'm really far in this chat when we're still talking about beer. Randall Clons, nice to have you on board from Northeast Illinois. Really cool to have you here. Andrea DXer says, check out the videos of Laserdisc versus DVD. For me, Laserdisc colors look more normal. DVD was more processed. I would guess that DVDs are more compressed for sure. But there's a lot of compression. There's a lot of compression vaults on the cable signals. Google user RVA, no, I do not have my ham license. Jonathan Robinson, 73, nice to have you here. Victor S, nice to have you here. PU5 VTO from Brazil, nice to have everybody here, really, really cool. Yeah, exactly, like Jonathan Robertson. The upload-download ratio makes sense for everybody. It's different for me. I'm very unique in my usage. Hey, Danny, nice to have you here. Nope, not a ham here. What else do we have? Let's try to go a little faster so I can get... Yeah, a lot of users on here are amateur radio operators. A lot of users. I have a lot of hams watching the show. Connor, little Hossy Cat, nice to have you here. Pretty cool. Let's go down. Yeah, they are lower powered LEDs, absolutely. So probably, you know, probably very little noise coming from there. Let's go down. Hey, Juan Amigo, nice to have you on board. ¿Cómo está mi amigo? Kevin Y, nice to have you here. Slowly coming down, saying hi. Hey, Radioactive, nice to have you on board. Pretty cool. Kat, what are you using to monitor shortwave radio? Well, I have several radios. Honestly, I have, this is an Ephedry SDR, and it's controlled by a computer, with a software called HD SDR. But I have an ICOM ICR 8500 desktop or tabletop model that has I listen to shortwave a lot with. I got a lot of portable receivers. What else do we have? Slowly coming down here. I'm gonna catch up. Sorry if I missed the question, by the way, just ask again. I went down. Shortwave was incredible in the days before the internet. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Really, really crazy in the 80s. Crazy times, lots of fun things, I can tell you that. Lots of fun with that. Yeah, 6754 for Trenton military. Yeah, but Gander is on. I've heard Gander 2 days ago. There we go. Here's Gander.
120 Zulu. Airport, Montreal International Airport. Montreal International Airport. Valid from the 1st at 2100 Zulu until the 2nd at 18.
So this is Gander. Gander is still alive. Gander, Newfoundland, Canada. But New York is gone. For sure. Any radios you want to get for Christmas? Yeah, I would probably like to have something, but I don't really have the money for anything. But of course, I would have surely appreciated, you know, if I had a dream. If I had a dream for a radio for Christmas, it would be the ICOM ICR 8600 that I find absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So Jerry's just bought a recent 15W 15 watt RS918 SDR ham transceiver. Looks pretty good. Oh, cool. Yep, RAF is on the air, PLF radio, right? Like I was saying. What else do we have here? Yeah, 5505. I've tried Shannon involvement 5505. You know, for me, 5505 was there every night. So it's not complicated. If I don't hear it, it's not on. Very simple. Because I heard Shannon all the time. Hi Mapper says, same feeling I had at our side of the Iron Curtain. VOA, Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Deutsche Welle, and BBC. They were on the only sources of information about life in the West. Kind of nostalgia. Yeah, there is nostalgia, absolutely. I mean, you know what? I've stumbled on YouTube. There's a guy that's got a Radio RSA South Africa full broadcast, a full 1 hour show in English from Shortwave, and it dates somewhere in I'm trying to remember, 1989, 88. And the first part of the news bulletin talks about apartheid. And, you know, it's like you go back and you're like, oh God, I remember that. You know, I remember in the 80s that, what was it, the band, there was a band that was created, and it was, you had a song, you know, that Ain't Gonna Play Sin City, because it was Artists Against Apartheid, something like that. It was like a gang of artists. I remember Bruce Springsteen was part of it. And it was, you know, a kind of a band created for that period of time when, you know, apartheid was there and the blacks were treated right in South Africa. There's a lot of things happening back then. You know, there's a friend of mine, we were talking about, you know, the events that are happening in the world today. And there's a lot of things happening in the world today. But as I was, you know, he was saying, oh, it seems like there's more happening today. And I was saying, no, there's probably the same amount. It's different. It's not like it was before. It's different, the things that are happening today. But there's still a lot of things that are happening that are kind of, you know, I still remember. You know, I remember turning on the nightly news and when I was a teenager. And you could hear, you know, that there was some, you know, things happening in Lebanon and Israel and you know, Palestine and everything. It's like there are some news like that that's like, man, it's always the same thing 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. But today there's different things. But, you know, as a shortwave listener, there are tons of things happening back in the 80s. It's just different, you know? It's just different. Radioactive's got Trenton on 15034. Oh man. Already, you know, William Helms says it talks about Radio Iran propaganda, and why is the percentage of incarcerations of non-whites and so on. You know, when a station calls itself Voice of Justice, it's like, you know, when there was that broadcast on WRMI called True News. You know, if you start your broadcast and you call yourself True News, I immediately have little red flags that says to myself, I think we're going to be careful with what these guys are saying, because anyone that's using that type of, oh, look at that type of, you know, saying everything that's true and everything is, you know, so it's pretty crazy. Mad Reader the Extra says, what I noticed lately is that New York had a lot of missing reports. Absolutely. I think it was. Maybe that was the start of what's happening. So, yeah, New York vomit is gone on all the frequencies. So now we got Gander. Gander is there at the usual time, but when it switches to New York, you know. What else do we have? Philip Briggs says, interesting, I can receive Trenton vomit almost daily, but never Gander. Huh. Probably as the, you know, I would guess, because Gander, I don't know, probably, you know, it could be just the way that they send their signal, or even the power they use. A while back, you contacted a radio company to let you test out radios. Whatever happened to that? You know what, Theo? I understood one thing, is that I don't want to have radios sent to me for testing purposes, and so I talked about it. Because I want to be free to say what I think of it. And I am going to you know, say that if a radio is crappy, and I want to be able to say it. So I rather purchase radios and give my honest opinion of, is it crappy, is it good, what's the good word or bad in it. Like that, you know, I'm free to say what I want. Kevin Weiss says, wish shortwave was still booming. Yeah. You know, if you've been a shortwave listener in the 80s or the 70s, any shortwave listener that's been there, I can tell you one thing, is it's pretty, you know, it's easy to think that we miss a little bit of those days of shortwave, because boy, there's a lot. And you know what? I realized today, because by the diversity of signals I listened today, I realized that I was missing out on tons of things back then. Typically, when I look at my radio listening in the 80s, I would go out of the international broadcast bands or the amateur bands very, very little. I would almost not go into the utility bands. And I realized today that I must have missed a lot of stuff by not doing this. Today I am, and you know what? Maybe it's the quest for signals. I'll call it like that, the quest for signals. Because the quest for signals is really, the less you have to listen to, the more you search for other signals. And I think what made me much more interested in everything, including utility stations, was as international broadcasters were fewer. So I had less things to listen to in their international broadcast bands. It forced me to do another thing. Okay, but I still want to listen to the radio, so what are you going to do? Let's go to these frequencies that you never listened to and see what's there. And I think it actually made me a shortwave listener that now is much more open to the idea of let's go to any frequency range to listen to something than in the past. I mean, any shortwave listener of the 70s, the 80s will tell you one thing. It was information overload. I mean, you know, at 0-100 hours UTC, you would sit down on your radio and it was like, okay, I have the choice of 27 different stations. Which one I will listen to tonight? Oh, is it Radio Berlin, Radio Romania, Radio Moscow, the BBC, Radio Tirana, Radio Yugoslavia? You know, you had all of that choice. And I think one of the things that the negative part of having so many signals in the international broadcast band, it kind of made me into I listen to stations, but I'm not really listening to outside the box, outside of what's in the international broadcast bands. The only thing I was listening to that I found really cool, and that you don't hear today really, I'm not even sure there's still some of those on the bands, but in the maritime bands, in the 80s, you could listen to phone calls from boats, you know, from ships to shore. They would make phone patches when family would, you know, they would want to call family or friends aboard a ship. And I loved that. I would go to these frequency ranges and tune slowly. And, you know, a lot of them were in languages I didn't understand, but from time to time you'd hear one in English or you'd hear one in French that I could understand. And I always found that so cool to listen to. Hey, somebody making a call aboard a ship. I don't know if, I don't think, I've not, at least I've not heard anything like that. Anybody know if there's still some ship-to-shore communications sometimes on the shortwave bands? Because I think they're all switched to like satellite phone and stuff like that now. PLF radio, any shortwave emergency frequencies for the volcano eruptions in Indonesia? That is a very good question. You know what? I will try to find a little more information about that for tomorrow. But one thing for sure, if you can receive Voice of Indonesia, in Europe, I believe 9525 and the 19, something like 18 or 19 100 hours UTC. Voice of Indonesia is probably a good source of information. They are there for sure. I would not be surprised that stations around, so like, you know, maybe you could have Radio New Zealand in the Pacific region and stuff like that that might maybe talk about it a little bit. You know, that's an interesting case of where Radio Australia is missing for us, because I'm sure Radio Australia and their broadcasts to the Pacific and to the Asia Pacific region probably would have talked about the Indonesia volcanic eruption. So you know, I'll try to dish out anything about the Indonesia stuff versus shortwave. But one thing for sure, Voice of Indonesia, anyone that can receive that station, probably. So oh, Matthew Keller says that was Little Steven's thing. It's I ain't going to play Sun City. Yeah, actually, that's it. That's it. Artists Against Apartheid, something like that. That was the group. Yeah. I think it was Artists Against Apartheid. Eh? It does sound. And I actually have the video on a VHS tape somewhere. I actually dished out my my VHS video, and I plugged it in here, and I found these old tapes when I used to tape all music video clips from the 80s, and I got like 30 hours of music videos on tapes. And so I found one and I put it in, and it's funny because is a Zenith VHS cassette player from 1984. It's a very old machine, and you know what? It still works. I'm amazed. And it's really big and heavy, but it still works. It was funny because I put the tape in and I could hear all these weird sounds. It was like, oh man, it seems to not like what I'm doing right now. And it actually pushed the cassette back out, and I know that when they do that, it's because something is wrong and it just can't play it, so it's just, you know, sending it back. And I put it back in, and I did that like maybe 4 or 5 times, and the 5th time it didn't come back out. I was like, okay, maybe I'm, you know, moving things around. And then I pressed the play button, and it started playing the tape. And there was a 2-hour tape of music videos, and I was, man, I was suddenly a teenager again. I was suddenly in 1984, 85. That VHS player, I think it's from 1984 or something like that. My dad bought it. And it was the first tape ever, actually, that I'd done. And the first video clip that played was Chaka Khan, I Feel For You. And immediately when it started, you know, the first notes of Chaka Khan, I was like, man, okay, I'm 14, 15 years old again. It transported me back in time suddenly. Just like shortwave radio in the 80s. Just crazy. Manuel Jesus Vilicanyas Checa. Hello there. Daniel 05 just got a Christmas tree up this year. Yeah, I've got the Christmas tree right there in the back. And I could maybe show you guys. I don't know. Let's do a quick, here we go. That's the Christmas tree right there in the corner. All I need to do now is the village. I want to put a little miniature train on the bottom, but that's the Christmas tree right now. So here we go. So Christmas, it's Christmas. Richard Cook, hello there. Nice to have you on board. Danny, Shortwave, Radio DX. Nice to have you on board. So let's check out 7550 for All India Radio. Almost nothing right now compared to other days. And 445. Nope. K-index was at 3 earlier, so I guess that its conditions are not perfect right now. It's very weak. 7550 is very weak for me. Driver Film Shortwave, hello there. It says true news egal true fake news. Yeah, exactly. MDK2 switching back to his better known handle. So nice to have you here. So pretty cool to have everybody here. Is Gander looking for the goose? Yeah, exactly. Daniel 05 says, by the way, Shell, I presented the radio project today at school and I got an A on it. That is cool. You know, that reminds me so much, Dan. You're bringing me back in time again. It brings me back to the 80s when I did my my radio lecture on shortwave radio, and I remember I talked for 45 minutes. You know, every kid in the class would talk about something for about 5 minutes and they didn't know what to talk about suddenly. When I got there, and they were, you know, we had to give a handwritten report, and everyone that was in front of the class that would last 5 minutes, and they would read from their report. And I got in front of the class, I took the report that I had, I put it in the corner of the desk, and I talked about shortwave for 45 minutes. I handed over, you know, I had selected letters from Radio Moscow, Radio Berlin, magazines that I had received from Radio Beijing, Radio Free China from Taiwan. I had selected really the cool stuff. And I would be, you know, people would like, you know, just checking that out. And everybody was amazed. I was like, man, you received something from the USSR. I mean, it looks funny today, you know, but I can tell you that in 1984, 1985, a 15-year-old kid that's got something from Radio Moscow in the USSR was a major event. It's like, I've got a letter from the USSR. That was something big. I mean, today it looks funny. It looks, you know, people will look at it and say, well, that, you know, no. You guys have no idea. Receiving letters and correspondence from every Eastern Bloc country was something big. It was like, wow, this is so cool. I remember my first letter from Radio Berlin, which was on the east side of Germany. I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And you know, they put a lot of stuff in there. I remember getting magazines and all sorts of things. It was amazing. Can tell you that. Jonathan Robertson says, yeah, I couldn't do that either about testing other radios and any other products. When you accept a free gift, you are at the point emotionally compromised. Absolutely. You're totally right on that. It's very, very, very difficult. Cal M says, Shannon's vomit is still on 3413, I think. I think they're off all frequencies. I've tried every frequency from Shannon vomit in the past week. 3413 around, you know, later at night, I often hear it. Weak, I haven't been hearing anything. Matthew Keller is getting Radio Nacional Amazonas. Yeah, Brazil is back. Is it good? 780. Oh, not bad. Not bad, there's signal tonight. Radio Nacional Amazonas is back from Brazil. Look at that.
A reportagem é de Carla Alexandre. A Comissão de Minas de Energia na Câmara realizou audiência pública para discutir o projeto de lei que define percentuais mínimos para a participação de empresas nacionais na exploração de petróleo e gás natural, chamado como lucro, variante percentual de acordo com a fase da exploração. Os disciplinas envolvidos na exploração de petróleo concordam que é preciso garantir a participação da indústria nacional. O problema ocorre em relação ao percentual dessa participação para representar.
So, Radio Nacional Amazonas in Brazil. Not bad. Not bad. Two Ends of Radio. So, Robert Babcock, nice to have you here. W0RAB in Connecticut. Nice to have you here. Good evening. Two Ends of Radio says shortwave in the 70s was the internet before the internet. Absolutely. That's pretty much that. The internet before the internet. So, you know. And Radio DXer says, because of the lack of shortwave signals for me due to the number of stations that have left the band over the years, I now DX more on the medium wave bands, which I never really did in the past. Opens new avenues. And I think that's why I also listen to much more broad spectrum. It kind of pushed, you know, I think that shows how deep radio is in our blood. You have less international broadcasters to listen to, but you still want to listen to the radio. So basically, you got to listen to something else. Jerry's listening to VE2LH from Canada 7128. Yeah, VE2LH is probably somewhere not too far from where I live. 7128. Did I hear that station? There's something there. 7128. I like it when I listen to an amateur radio, like a you know, one of the amateur radio stations from Quebec, and they live like, you know, maybe 10 or 20. There's one guy that lives like maybe 15, about, you know, I'd say maybe a kilometer northwest of me, and when he goes on the bands, you know, I hear him really well because they're not very far. So I kind of like it because I can compare my antenna and my listening to that guy, because that guy being close to me, I'm supposed to hear what he hears, and I could see that that guy has really either lower noise or really good antenna, because I hear maybe 80% of what he gets, but there's a few stations that I don't hear at all, and he's actually receiving them. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But it could be lower noise also, you know, but also antennas. Antennas are important. Nicolas Milnist, hello there. Notice that the 40-meter band been very good all week in the UK. Strong signals. I heard that station from South Africa I've been hearing last year. Around 7131, 7135, lower sideband, around 0400. South Africa. Really cool. So, going slowly down, but a little faster if I can. Manual the Exorcist, I think there's still C-phone on shortwave, but very limited compared to the past. Yeah, because I seem to have... I seem to have seen a report somewhere of somebody mentioning they heard some kind of ship-to-shore phone patch. So maybe it still works, but there's not a lot of it. Jerry says, Captain Dave on the Captain Dave show, do phone patches for his show every time. Should be live tonight. It's 38:43. I wonder how legal that is for that that guy that on 38:43. I wonder. I'll try to listen in if I'm home, because I don't know if I'll be home. Philip Brick says, I read once that North Korean radios are permitted by the regime, have a number of preset government. Yeah, absolutely. They are not tunable, absolutely. I think that the I've read a lot about that, and the thing is that there are some North Koreans that are a little more technical that have learned how to open the radio and unblock or unlock those presets. And there was one story that I read that's, you know, it just shows you how horrible it is. One guy had actually unlocked his radio and his neighbor found out. And over there, if you actually, you know, tell that your neighbor is doing something bad, you know, you get like more food and more, you know, you get a little more attention. So, you know, and over there it's kind of complex, you know, people are not eating, in North Korea, people are not eating, you know, enough food. I mean, they're really rationed, and it's very, very tough life. And of course, if you tell on your neighbors or on somebody, even in your own family, that, you know, he's doing something bad, you get a little more food, a little more, you know, so it's kind of, you know, and you're the good North Korean little, you know, guy or girl. And I read an article that once one guy had done that, his neighbor found out, and his neighbor told the military, and that guy, the whole family, I mean, over there it's crazy. It's like, even if one guy does it, the whole family gets punished. And they kind of send them away in some kind of labor camp where, you know, you probably die at some point. Danny, Shortwave Radio DX just picked up a Kenwood R2000 for $50. It is missing the attenuation knob and the VFO is dead. Other than that, all caps was replaced and it's working well. Wow. $50, that's not bad a deal. Absolutely. Not bad of a deal. So let's check it out here. DK2 says, my sister and I used to record videos for years, probably 82, 85. I think we recorded that Sun City song because we were big U2 fans, and Bono was that. Yeah, Bono was on that, I remember. It was Bruce Springsteen, I remember Bono, and there's a bunch of other guys there that I, at the time, and I'm not sure I could identify today also. That's because Mr. G just missing the antenna sticking out of the top. I'd have to drill a hole because it's like the antenna is going to be a little short. Bobby Burgess says 7550 is nothing. VK2FBAJ says Albania used to be like North Korea. That's why I was always fascinated by Radio Tirana. Oh yeah, and it was, you know, really harsh, and their interval signal was harsh. It was really crazy. Jonathan Robinson said, we lazy asses are usually get the tree up a few days before Christmas, and it gets taken shortly before October, so we can put it back up again in a few months. My rule is I do my Christmas tree about a month before Christmas, So my Christmas tree has been up for about a week, and a little more, and I usually keep it until about mid-January, around the 15th of January, because what I do usually with my Christmas tree is I not just think of it as a Christmas tree. For me, it's more of a winter, kind of a winter tree. And for me, it's nice because in a cold January day when it's gray and snowy, it puts color. So I kind of put my Christmas tree more as a winter tree. And I was thinking that one day, because there's an old man the other side of the street. The old man is like 90 years old, and you know he has difficulty walking, but he walks his dog 2 times a day. And actually, I crossed the guy yesterday evening, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you don't have your decorations in the windows yet." And I said, "No, but this weekend I'm going to do it," because that guy, he puts his Christmas decorations outside like on the 1st of November. And I was telling him they should not be called Christmas decorations. They should be called winter decorations. And we could have, you know, colorful lights all winter. And he said, "Oh man, yes, that would be the case." And it was just so funny because the guy is really, really, you know. Yeah, absolutely radioactive. I was preparing for today back in high school. That's pretty much it, radioactive. Absolutely. Oh yeah, Radio Warsaw. Yeah. Mika Dalmish says, "Remember Polish Radio Warsaw? Took forever to get replies." Oh yeah, I remember. I got QSLs from Radio Warsaw and then Radio Polonia. And I remember it was dreadfully long. Some of these stations, you know, some of these stations would answer. But I can tell you one thing. It was long. You had to be patient. Some of these stations, it'd take a year before you get a reply. But they would reply. They would reply, but it took a long time. And I remember the personal type letters, you know, with the typing machines at the time. You could see that it was, you know, typed by somebody. The letter was typed on the typing machine. It was not one of those pre-made whatever. It was, yeah, they actually typed this thing. And, you know, and it was, I always found it really cool when you'd get a, letter like that was actually signed by a pen, you know, that you could see the ink. Somebody took the time to sign it. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Really, this is really personal, you know. I remember HCJB, when I would write, and they would actually read my letters on the air. And I was so surprised because they probably took notes in the computers there, because I remember they were reading the letters on the air and they were giving details. I remember when I did my thing, when I did my lecture on shortwave, I had told HCJB that, you know, to promote shortwave, I had done a lecture in school on shortwave radio. And I remember once writing to them, and my letter was read on the air and said, oh, and I think it was the musical mailbag, and the guy that read it, and I don't remember his name, but he was one of the well-known announcers or names at HCJB. I remember him saying, "Oh, this is Gilles, the guy that, you know, had his high school lecture on shortwave." And I was like, oh my God. And, you know, that was like a year before. I was like, oh God, man, that guy knows. So they took note of all of that for sure. So, yeah, feeling like Christmas. Cheers. Hello there, Mr. Travis Nolan. Pretty cool. Nice to have all of you on board, by the way. It's really, really fun. Top Flight, nice to have you on board from Jersey. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Vaughn says, look more plastic than a tree. Well, it's an artificial tree, but it's pretty much a tree. It looks like a tree. It doesn't, you know, the video doesn't render justice to the tree itself. Because it does look like a tree, pretty much. Jerry says, receiving 5020 AM from Solomon Islands. Right now? Really? Wow. 5020, I don't think I'll hear that. Nope, nothing there. There was that pirate the other day on 1510. I hear Radio Rebelde is coming in from Cuba, 5025. So Radio Rebelde from Cuba. Actually much stronger than Radio Havana Cuba itself. Kind of interesting. Sweden calling the Xers. You know what, Steve Mullington, nice to have you on board, by the way. When you after the show, when you want to go to YouTube, type Sweden calling the Xers. There's at least 3 or 4 videos of a full show. Sheldon says, Sheldon, do you remember the female newsreader on Rai Italian radio? We used to refer to her as the dead lady. Absolutely. Absolutely, I do remember. It was just so crazy. It was like that monotone voice. Oh man, that was like, you know. And you want to know a funny story about Rai, Italy? It had an interval signal, which was birds. And it was nothing else than birds. And I remember one evening, I was about 14. One evening, it came on and it had the little birds. And I was listening to that, waiting for the broadcast to start. And my mom goes outside on the balcony, and after about 5 minutes, you know, I'm wondering what she's looking at, but I'm like, you know. And at some point, she comes back inside and she says, "Do you hear the birds? I'm trying to find where the birds are." And I'm like, "Oh, man, no, Mom, it's in the radio. This is Italy. There's no birds outside singing. It's really the radio." And she said, "Oh, it's coming from your radio." It's like I suddenly realized that for the past 10 minutes you were searching for the birds that were singing outside. Good times, good times. Oh man, I can tell you that. Oh God. Bobby Burgess says, if we have teleportation devices, I will be sending a slice of pizza. Oh man, yes. Please. I would like that. Well, actually, I shouldn't, because I am supposed to go eat out with my friends downtown. So we're going to actually a restaurant that is very, very good with pizza in a wood stove. It's really, really good. One of the best pizzas in town. It's called Il Focolaio. It's really, really good. So we're going. I'm meeting friends a little later. So that's why the show is going to be a little short. You know, it's fine, but I'm going to continue. If I leave for 5:30, I should be okay. So I'm going to continue a little bit more. And by the way, for those that want to help me out, a little bit of donations, PayPal at either paypal.me/shortwave or at the Yahoo email. Some people say here they can't reach your website, so you can go to your PayPal account or send it to the Yahoo email you see here. Or you can be one of the patrons that are on patreon.com. I have 10 patrons giving me a little something every month. I received my due today. I want to thank everybody that have donated. I've seen some of you donated. I see little notifications here, so I know that some of you donated today. But thank you very much, by the way. And you know, I'm trying to reach out to whoever has, you know, never donated and love my show and been watching for months or years. You know, if you like what I do, why not give me a little something? Helps out, and it's really, really welcome. Thanks, everybody. And don't worry if you can't donate. Totally understand. So, what else do we have here? John Timken says, I thought you were going to say that you use your Christmas tree as a support for one end of the dipole. Yeah, but you know what? If my Christmas tree would be a real tree outside, probably it would be used as a support for an antenna. Somehow. Somehow. I can tell you that. Oh, man. Really, really. Man Radio DX says, remembers Radio Canada International. We're still sending me schedules via the post 3 years after I requested one. Showed how much they did care for their listeners. You know what? A great example of that is Radio Cairo. Radio Cairo in Egypt. When I was young, where I lived when I was young, I moved in 1990. And in 1991, my dad was the only one still there. He moved to another city on the South Shore here. And my brother and my brother and his wife were actually living next door to where I was living when I was young. And one day, she meets the neighbor that lives there where I used to live when I was young, and they talk, and she comes up with, you know, she's taking the mail, and she comes up with, oh, I keep getting these letters from some, you know, other country to Gilles Letourneau, and she says, oh, it's my brother-in-law. If you want, if you receive some of those, give it to me. And I remember for years when they were living there, my sister-in-law was, you know, giving me these letters saying, look, you received all of these letters. And I remember I would write to these stations and let them know, look, I moved. Stop sending mail to that address. I moved. And yet, you know, like 10 years later, there were still some letters going there of, you know, new schedules or whatever. Yeah, I loved HCJB also, Brett Wayne, can tell you that. VK2 FBAJ says, remembers a personalized Christmas New Year's postcard, Radio Tirana, every year without fail. Felt very special, absolutely felt special. I remember the really beautiful Radio Beijing wall calendars. I would ask for a wall calendar every year. They had these huge, beautiful wall calendars every year at Radio Beijing back then. It was amazing. There were a lot of really cool stuff back then. I mean, you know, stations weren't strapped for cash like today. Today, all stations are pretty much compressed on the money side. So they do the minimum amount that they can. But, man. So, hey, Travis Nolan. Cool. Pretty cool to have you on board, Travis. Have you got Pyongyang 6400 tonight? I can try it, but I never get that station here. No, there's a very weak carrier in the noise, but I never get that station here. You got so much better reception than me, Richard. It's just amazing. Random Clon 66501 Upper Sideman, which is, I believe, Chesapeake, Virginia, Coast Guard weather.
Wednesday night, east wind strength of 15 knots, speed 5 to 7 feet. Synopsis for the southwest north Atlantic, including the Bahamas.
Oh, I can tell you, Vaults, we don't have shortage of trees. I can tell you that. I mean, here, almost every 3 or 4 corner streets that you go, there's some guys selling trees for Christmas. But I am one of those that doesn't want to, every year, get that tree, bring it over, and whatever. So I've got an artificial one. Because it just, I put it in a box, and next year I just put it back up. Take care, PLF Radio. It was nice to have you on board. But I think the camera doesn't show justice because it it looks pretty, you know, it's not like a real. I'm gonna give you that, but it looks surprisingly good for an artificial tree. So yep, tomorrow is a show. Remember guys, tomorrow is a show, 2000 hours UTC, which is gonna be a little longer than today because I will of course make it a little longer, and we'll talk about shortwave as usual. Yeah, but the low frequencies, you know, Cherry says Solomon Islands, 8,000 miles away, picking up from far away lately. Guess that's a good thing. Yeah, but when propagation was good, it's been really, really, really good. I can tell you that. Dan 805 says, saying something about pizza reminded me of the longest show. One day you'll get that pizza, then we'll beat the show record. Yeah, 5 hours and a half. That is something. But you know, it's easy to do, honestly. I just look at the time now. We're a little more than 2 hours away. And, you know, I can tell you one thing. For me, that 2 hours looks like I've been talking for the last 10 minutes. It just goes so fast that it's, you know, at some point, especially when things go and we talk and we interact and there's radio and there's, I mean, you could do 6 hours and it sounds like you've been there for 10 minutes. It's just crazy. So, Brother Nutcase, aka Stare on 9505. Yeah. Jerry says 5 p.m. already great. Yeah, here sun sets around 4:15, 4:20. But householder, nice to have you on board from Ohio. XN80Xer, nice to have you here. Keegan from Northwest Arkansas. Always nice to have all of you here. Really, really cool. What else do we have here? Take care, John Timken. Tomorrow, 2000 hours. I'll be here. Always nice to have you on board. Manrio DX, what do we have here? You should be able to get 5020. It's S9 here. I got nothing here. You know, 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers is a big amount of I don't even have a peep of a carrier. You know what surprises me that you're getting Solomon Island on 5020 is that it's still daytime path for the rest of North America and for the Pacific area, which is kind of interesting. So, you know. The funniest thing is, I think it was Theo. Theo wanted to buy me pizza that day, and he called like 10 pizza places, wanted to buy pizza for me with his credit card, and no one accepted his credit card unless they could really see it. So I never got pizza just because of that, because he wanted to buy pizza. It was just, yeah, you know, okay. Ronald Mullis, hey there. How does altitude affect DX shortwave listening? Of course, I get a lot more stations on the hills, but I wonder if signals improve exponentially if you hike really high or even take a flight. So, you know what? We got to remember one thing. On shortwave radio, if you hike on a mountain, one thing that you'll notice, and I think that is the major factor in getting the signals, is that on top of mountain you'll probably have no noise, or just the natural noise around you, because you're getting far away from civilization. So I think the first thing we got to notice is on top of mountain, no noise. That's going to help you tremendously. Now, on the shortwave side, okay, because let's talk about shortwave versus VHF UHF. So VHF UHF, line of sight, being on top of a big mountain will help you get much more distance. On shortwave, I'm not sure that being on top of a mountain versus on the ground floor somewhere necessarily makes a huge difference. What I think is what we see on shortwave on top of a mountain, for shortwave, then again, okay, remember, shortwave I'm talking here, is because on top of a mountain, you just have zero noise, and that's it. Because I don't think on shortwave we can notice any difference on signals, whether you're on top of a mountain or at, you know, sea level. I think it's really noise versus no noise. On VHF, UHF, one thing for sure, on VHF, UHF, you will get a huge advantage of being on the top of a mountain. Because now, since it's line of sight, you are increasing the distance of that line of sight. And that is a huge advantage. And that's why FM stations, TV stations, repeater, you know, amateur radio repeaters, they want to be as high as possible because you'll get the most distance possible. But for shortwave, I don't think it makes a difference, personally. You know, maybe it could, I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't think, for the nature of shortwave signals. And I think if you find that on top of a mountain, you are getting a better signal, I think it has mostly to do with the fact that on top of that mountain, you have no noise. Hey, Daxfire74, thank you for being here. Tomorrow, 2000 hours UTC. If you want to come back, we'll be live again. And thank you for being here and being a great fan. Oh, Jerry, if it's in Spanish, you're hearing 5025. You're hearing, okay, Jerry, because there's no Spanish on Solomon Islands. Look at this here. That's what you're hearing. Okay? You're hearing 5025. You're hearing that station from Cuba, which is Radio Rebelde. Because you know, 5020 would have to propagate all the way across the Pacific Ocean, which is in daylight right now, which is impossible. So that's why I was a little skeptical. So I think you're listening to Radio Rebelde. Because there is no Spanish on Solomon Islands. I believe they have English and maybe some local native languages in the Pacific area, but they don't have Spanish, that's for sure. That's a great question, Sheldon. You helped to clear out. I think he's listening to Rebelde and 5025. What's on 9590? 9490, sorry. Something very weak here, but I think it's W. It's one of the U.S. stations anyway. EIBI space EIBI space.de. I think 9490 at this time of the night is one of the US stations. 9490 is, oh, okay. It is, what do we have right now? We're at 2200. Oh, it could be, if it's in Mandarin, if it's like, sounds like Chinese, 22 to 2300 is Madagascar World Voice, The Light of Life. It's from Madagascar on 22 to 2300 on 8490. So that could be what you're listening to right now. Actually, it's the only station at this time. So you're listening to Madagascar World Voice on 94.90. And if it sounds Chinese, it is. Not sure what's on 13560. I'll try it, but I don't think I'll hear anything. It's been there for a while. This is what I hear. I'm hearing tones on 13560. Is that what you're hearing, Richard? These little tones? I don't know. Hey, Douglas Perry, nice to have you on board. Hey, Blanchard, 373, take care. Brett Wayne says 5025 S9. So okay. So you're getting Radio Rebellion from 5025, Jerry, probably. Forget what I said about the pizza, Joe. Want a burger? Currently making some burgers. Yeah, sure. Why not? I'd like that. I'm a little hungry. Steve Richard, nice to have you here. Do buried utility wire reduce interference? If they are buried, yes, I would guess. I would guess that it does lower interference when they are actually buried, because remember that the ground itself actually will isolate signals. So if you have a you know, some kind of radio signal propagating from something under the ground, technically you won't hear it above ground on most frequencies. Not everywhere. I think the very, very, very low frequencies can penetrate the earth, but for most it's I would think that utility wires that are underground are actually less of a problem with noise. Absolutely. You know, when they're in the air, they act like antennas. So if there is some noise to be broadcast, they will broadcast it. It's like having a big antenna outdoors. That's for sure. It sounds Chinese. Yeah, okay, that's Madagascar World Voice, Randall Clones, on that frequency, 94.90 kilohertz. Brett Wayne says it's S7 in Western New York. So 94.90 is Madagascar World Voice from Madagascar. So it's pretty cool DX. MDK2 says 13560 is a science and technology frequency. So it's some nearby industrial equipment. I have a pulse in my QTH and you can't hear it if you go a couple of miles away. Oh, that's interesting. So I've got some... It is very steady, so it is very local. I would need to try that. You know what? You piqued my curiosity here. I'm going to tune that on the Shortwave Portable someday and take a walk and see if I can get it. So, it's the first Sunday. Scandinavian, Finland. I got nothing here. All I've got is 6175 that I believe is China Radio. I'm getting CR on 6175 but nothing on 6170. So I'm not sure you're getting 6170 Scandinavian Weekend Radio. What's the time of broadcast? Let me just check 6170 here. EIBI space 6170 6170. Yeah, December the 1st, 22 to 2400 hours from Europe in Finnish. So, hey Richard, you're not that far from, you're closer than me anyways to Finland. Do you hear something on 6170, Richard? Right now, 22 to 2400. It's supposed to be Scandinavian Weekend Radio in Finnish. And it's broadcasting today, 1st of December. The next one will be Christmas Eve, December the 24th. Are you having a live hangout tomorrow? Yes, Douglas. I will be live tomorrow at 2000 UTC. Absolutely. Weighted Cube, nice to have you here. No problem. Better late than never, did they say? Do they still use Simpo? You know what Simpo is you know, it's been a shortwave, kind of a shortwave recognized code to let a station know of the, you know, the signal strength and everything. I've always thought, honestly, I've always thought that using simple terms instead of, you know, your signal was good, there's a slight interference, I could hear some interference from a station that was, you know, 5 kilohertz above or whatever, is probably much more interesting to them than the simple code itself. But I would believe that a lot of stations probably still kind of understand Simpo. But you know, one of the things I've always wondered is how popular Simpo code can be for stations, honestly. And it's very, you know, Simpo code has one major issue, is that the people tend to not really use them correctly. You know, I mean, if your Simpo is 55553, what's wrong? You know, or 33335. You know, the O is for overall. You should have some kind of average there. So, you know, I think just explaining the type of interference you got, letting them know that it's a local interference is much more useful to them than just that's the noise. But if you can tell them, well, I have high noise where I am, so it's a little difficult because of that, but you can hear them, gives them an idea. I think it's a clearer idea to just explain the noise than to use a simple code, for example. Henry Turner, nice to have you on board. And VK3DET from Australia, always nice to have you here. Okay, so you got nothing on 6170. Interesting. I wonder if they're on the air. If you got nothing on 6170, I'm wondering if they're on the air. Kind of interesting here. So nice to have all of you on board. Hey guys, I really have to leave. I'm so sorry because I promised some friends. So Sheldon just checked a few SDRs in Europe and heard nothing. I'm wondering if they're on the air. They're probably not on the air, for sure. So Eaton Best, everybody, nice to have you here. Sorry, but I'll have to go because I need to meet people at 6 p.m. downtown. I'll be late if I don't leave in the next 5 minutes. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Tomorrow there's a show, 2000 hours UTC. I promise it's going to be longer than this one. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's always fun. Donations, if you want to help me out, please do so. It really helps me tremendously. Thank you very much. And basically, it's always fun to have all of you on board. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being such great fans. Thanks for being here. Tomorrow, 2000 UTC, and we're going to talk about tons of things. We're going to dabble a little bit about SDRs, but we're going to mostly do some digital modes. A lot of people want me to revisit digital modes. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. Have fun. And love you all. Really a lot of fun to be here every day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.